I moved to Denver from the East Coast and realized I could take up astronomy again because the light pollution levels were much lower here, especially if you drive an hour out of Denver. In the East, you could hardly see anything in the sky unless there was a blackout. We could see the moon and the planets, but forget about the Milky Way. Here in Denver, it's not hard to find a suburban dark sky, and excellent dark skies are not far away. Dark skies are always with a new or crescent moon, as the moon is a huge source of light pollution. The first thing to do in Denver is not to buy a telescope. It's better to go to some of the Denver Astronomical Society open houses where you can get advice from experts and look through their telescopes. You can also go into the Chamberlain Observatory just near the University of Denver campus and look through the 20-inch historic refractor. The Astronomical Society also maintains a dark site for members an hour from Denver and hosts dark night skies once a month for members. Your key piece of equipment is not the telescope, it's your eye. You'll quickly realize that the telescope images you see by eye tend to be in black and white, not color, and you need to maximize the sensitivity of your eye. You do need to let your eyes dilate. That is for the pupils to open wide, but this just takes a few minutes. You have two separate visual systems in the eye. The cones see color but are not good in dim light, and your rods work better in dim light but do not see in color. Both the rods and the cones become more sensitive in dim light, but it takes about 30 minutes for full light adaptation. That's why astronomers use dim light at night. White light destroys the dark adaptation. You also need to know what you're looking at. You can download a free star chart from the internet or buy a planisphere, a star chart that adjusts to the seasons and time of night. Some people prefer to use star software, usually on their smartphone. Others like books, widely available for free from the Denver Public Library. The next step may be a telescope, but many begin with binoculars, such as a Poro prism model in 7 or 8 power for under $100. These work great for many celestial objects and are easy to aim and use. What binoculars and telescopes do is give you larger eyes that collect more light. A 50 millimeter wide binocular collects about 100 times more light than your eye, and an 8-inch telescope collects 1,600 times more light. Galileo had only about a 1.5-inch telescope with 20 power magnification. You can buy a better telescope than this today for about $50. Now, when it's time to buy a telescope, Denver has a pro-level telescope store again. This is Mile High Astronomy, and they provide advice, and they sell at internet prices. Basically, there's 3 kinds of telescopes: refractors, reflectors, and those with both a refractor and a reflector in them, and each has its pros and cons. There are also 3 main kinds of telescope mounts, each with its pros and cons. And today, there are go-to mounts that are computer-controlled, and you let the computer do all the work, if you can figure out how to use the computer. The details of the pros and cons are too much for here, and that's a good reason to go to some Astronomical Society events, take a close look at what Denverites are using, look through the scopes, and see what would be best for you. Opinions do vary, but common advice for beginners is to buy a small refractor and a simple alt-azimuth mount, or a short tube reflector, or a 6 to 8-inch reflector and a Dobsonian mount, or a Maksutov Cassegrain in a modest 90 to 127 millimeter aperture. There are many reputable brands. Many are made in the same Chinese factories, but then have different brand names slapped on the final model. Astronomy is not expensive, at least until you get hooked on top quality optics. A beginner outfit costs less than a day of skiing, and you'll be likely to spend more just traveling to pristine dark sites and staying overnight than you will on your equipment. Well, that's our short introduction to starting up astronomy in Denver. It's a great hobby, and living in the Denver area is a good place to get started.